It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. So glad you're joining us today. It's been kind of a busy time, actually, on the U of L campus this summer, and we're getting close to the start of school and getting close to the start of football season. So going to be busy here in the next few weeks. But we do have some things to talk about at the University of Louisville. So on the show today, as you probably know, astronomy is a hot topic right now. And there's some U of L folks who are on the team of researchers making some big discoveries in space. A U of L scientist played a role in the recent discovery of an exoplanet that's 7,800 degrees Fahrenheit. Karen Collins is a U of L grad, and her former colleague John Kielkopf will be here to talk about that discovery, as well as the upcoming total solar eclipse, which will stretch across parts of Kentucky. But first, I know you've got a smartphone. It's probably recording some of your health data right now. You also probably search online and correspond with people online who have health problems similar to you or your family members. But have you even thought about the privacy concerns or the legal concerns? Do you have any of those concerns about the collection or sharing of your health data in cyberspace? Well, Mark Rothstein is a professor in both the Brandeis School of Law at the University of Louisville and the U of L School of Medicine, and he studies legal issues involved in healthcare and privacy issues as well. Welcome, Mark. Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, so let's talk about it. You've got a cell phone, smartphone, right?
I do.
Do you ever share any of your health data on it, or is it recording health data as you walk along, the number of steps you take, and
I do not record any health data or anything else private on my cell phone.
And my suspicion is the rest of us should follow your advice and your example, right?
Well, they need to be aware of some of the risks involved. So if you are interested in downloading a health app, you'll be asked to sort of click through consent. Many times that gives the app developers and the company the right to use your information for research purposes or to redisclose it however they want. Sometimes it actually gives them the right to download all sorts of other information on your phone. So we are tempted to just sort of click yes, like we're downloading some modest program, but these health apps are not regulated, and we're often giving up more information than we realize.
Is that the biggest thing that you're looking at as part of your research and your studies, is just that, what you just talked about, or is it something else involving health data and privacy concerns?
Well, one of the issues that we are looking at now is mobile health devices used by unregulated researchers. So if a researcher at the U of L wanted to do a study involving the use of mobile devices and stuff, that would be regulated by the federal laws, and we'd have to demonstrate that there was adequate informed consent and things like that. But lately, it's so much easier now for sort of what are called citizen scientists to do their own research or to try to do their own research, and that's not regulated. So you can send off your own information and samples to get genetic testing done by mail order, basically.
I've done that.
Okay, you can get lab tests that you want. You can correspond and with other people through various websites, and so the do-it-yourself mentality has spread to research. And there are lots of risks, privacy and otherwise, when unregulated research is carried out. And that's what we're studying for the NIH in this 3-year grant that we got in May.
And the grant you got was for how much, and exactly what are the things you're talking about besides that?
The grant was approximately $1.9 million over 3 years. And what we're going to do is to study all the issues that are related to mobile health as it's used for research. And one of the interesting things that we're going to do is that we're going to actually work with app developers, having workshops for them to tell them all about the privacy risks and the security risks involved, and what software is available sort of off the shelf that they can incorporate into their health apps. And we're going to do some training for them, as well as government officials and patient groups. So I think we're going to hopefully make a difference in this area.
We're talking with Mark Rothstein, who's a professor at the University of Louisville, both at the law school and the School of Medicine. We're talking about privacy concerns around basically the digital economy now. When you talk about these the DNA things. I mean, everybody's doing that. Ancestry.com, and there's a couple other ones where you take the swab and you send it in to some company. They don't have to. There's no HIPAA rules or anything regarding that information that I send and my DNA that I send to them?
Correct.
Is that what you're telling me?
They are not what are called covered entities under HIPAA. So the only thing that restrains them are the contractual agreements between you and the companies. And many times people don't read through those consent documents or give the companies the power to use the information for research or to redisclose it to business partners. And so it's something that we're taking a pretty close look at.
So is Ancestry.com using my DNA to do some research that I don't know about? Probably, since I'm sure I consented and I agreed to the contractual terms.
Well, I don't want to say they're doing it without your consent, but you probably could have consented to it.
Legally,
Yeah.
they're doing it with my consent because I signed off on something, but chances are, might they be using that for some other purpose?
Yes.
Really? Is it a for sure thing that they are?
Well, I think many of these companies are. I'm not familiar with the research of all the particular companies, but if you were in that business, one of your business model pillars is to make the best use of the information that you can. And if people are going to consent, you're going to monetize that information to the extent of your abilities.
And sell it, probably, right?
Absolutely.
And you also talked about these, what you call them, citizen scientists? Or
Citizen scientists, yeah.
Citizen researchers. So give me a for instance. What would that be? Would that be like Mark Rothstein decides he's got some form of diabetes or something, and he wants to see if others that have similar conditions as you do, you want to track them down as many as you can to see what their symptoms are and how they regulate it and how they handle it, and you put it out there on the internet, on Facebook or someplace. Is that what we're talking about here, that you're trying to gather a bunch of information from other people with symptoms similar to yours?
So let me give you an example,
Okay.
Building on what your hypothetical is.
Okay.
So suppose I have some sort of disease, and I'm affiliated with 1,000 or 2,000 people on the internet who also have that. I may read online somewhere that some experimental treatment in some other country,
Guatemala or something.
has been helpful, and I decide, let's do a trial of that here. And so I round up my 1,000 people and give them, instructions on how to get access to a certain drug, and send it out, and you send your health information to me, and I'm going to compile all that data. Well, there are lots of problems with that. First of all, people may be foregoing their standard therapy in hopes of something better that turns out to be much worse.
Right.
Also, if I'm the researcher, I'm not covered by the federal research regulations or the HIPAA privacy rule. So there's no limitation on the informed consent. There's no requirement that I keep the data secure that I'm getting. I could sell it. Another problem is that suppose I go through this data and without proper training or thought, declare in some sort of public announcement that using this crazy substance is very helpful. So then people even beyond the study may be tempted to do that, and to their health detriment. So there are all these risks involved. That's why we have research regulations, to make sure that the risks to the participants are minimized and are in relation to the possible benefits.
I saw, I think it was in one of the papers that you sent me, that there are 25 million compelled disclosures of health information each year. What is a compelled disclosure, and how is that different from what you're looking at?
Well, this is one of the most overlooked areas of privacy, I think, in the United States. And so we tend to think of in terms of breaches of privacy, where there's data hacked, a lost laptop, and so on. More common are the instances in which we give our consent for others to get information, and I call some of that compelled disclosures. So if I apply for a job, it's perfectly legal for my possible employer to say, Before you start here, I want to make sure that you're well enough to do this job. Sign this authorization that gets me access to your health records. And I will do that. There are about 12 million of those disclosure agreements signed every year in the United States. The problem is, even though the employer is acting lawfully and the employer has a valid interest in many cases in my health, what the employer gets typically is my entire health record. And with electronic health records now, those are increasingly longitudinal, eventually, cradle
They go
to
back
grave.
30, 40 years
Correct.
or whatever, yeah.
And comprehensive. It's going to have all of my interactions with the healthcare system. And the employer may only need to know what happened at my knee surgery last year, and not that when I was in college I had mental health issues that I needed counseling for, and so forth. And that's a major concern in terms of privacy laws.
So how do you fix that, though? Through your research and what the NIH wants to know, what recommendations could you make to the NIH about how they might be able to possibly fix that and provide some sort of HIPAA-type protection to future employees?
Right. So these disclosures in employment and in many other areas like life insurance and disability insurance, filing for Social Security disability, VA veterans benefits, et cetera, it just goes on and on and on. And one of the things that we need to do is start thinking about this new health record system that we have and its ability to respond to limited requests for information. Right, so there's a technological fix for this, and if you talk to the computer experts, they say, we can do anything you want if you'll pay for it. And there hasn't been this demand yet for the disclosure of limited amounts of information.
So, for instance, going back 5 years or something like that, if I apply for a job at the University of Louisville, they say, we want to see your medical records for whatever reason. I say, sure, but they would only go back 5 years. Is that what you're talking about instead of my entire medical history?
That's one possibility. Another is, well, suppose they're concerned about your ability to lift 25-pound boxes. Well, then you strike out all the other sorts of things that may have no relevance to that and just give them that information. And we don't have that capacity now. And so customarily, all these requesters get comprehensive information, and there's the privacy loss. I also want to relate privacy to more tangible things. If people get the sense that their confidential information is not going to be kept private, they may be reluctant to get medical care for things like sexually transmitted infections, substance abuse, et cetera. And the public health imperative to have these sorts of treatments on a timely basis suggests that we need to think, about this problem and the consequences.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that, but that could be a real downer for health care across the United States and drive up health insurance costs, obviously. If you got people that don't try and get help on the front end. Yeah, embarrassed.
I don't want people with tuberculosis out in public and coughing on me when they're afraid to get treatment because they're afraid they won't be able to get a job or health care.
All right, I want to go back to one thing before we wrap up here. When we're talking about the smartphones, like there's tons of apps, and you talked about them, that record your blood pressure throughout the day, your how many steps you walk, that kind of thing. How much of that data that's being collected on these apps or on my iPhone is going somewhere other than just to me to see what my health was for the day?
Most of it.
So what are they doing? What are they doing with it? Is
they're
Apple doing anything with it, or is it some WebMD doing something with it?
Well, it's not Apple, but Apple is facilitating
selling it to somebody.
And because the specific apps that you give license to use your information, they're going to sell it, share it, analyze it themselves to try to find out all sorts of things. And I would be reluctant to sign up for one of those programs. They don't often work, and sometimes they sort of work in the opposite way. So there was a study earlier this year about people who downloaded this app that's supposed to help you sleep better. And people were so worried about the app that they actually got less sleep. So we need to be careful about that. So.
All right. So Mark Rothstein, your advice to folks is be careful with your health information and what? Don't download the apps that claim to give you health information?
Well, think through it carefully. It's not like a word processing program that you're agreeing to the terms on downloading. People are going to get more health information than you know.
All right, Mark Rothstein, appreciate it. Interesting stuff, and good luck with the study. In 3 years, we might want to check back in with you from time to time, see what you found out. Well, as you probably know, there has been lots of talk about the solar eclipse that will darken Kentucky during the day on August 21st. And just a lot of talk about space discoveries in general. It's a hot topic right now, and U of L scientists and U of L graduates are playing a role in some of the research that's going on out in space, including the discovery of a new exoplanet. John Kielkopf is an astrophysicist, a professor at U of L, and Karen Collins is an astronomer with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory. That's a mouthful. And she's a U of L graduate. So congratulations to both of you. First to you on the discovery, and John for all your years at the university.
No, thank you.
Good to see both of you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit, Karen, about the discovery of this exoplanet. I guess first you ought to tell people what an exoplanet is and what'd you find?
Well, so it's a planet just like the planets in our solar system that orbit our sun, except they orbit other stars other than our sun. This particular planet is a Jupiter-like planet, except it's called a hot Jupiter because it orbits very near, it orbits its star in 1.5 days. So it's really hot. Its star is very hot. And so this is the hottest planet that has ever been discovered, the hottest atmosphere of the planet.
How hot is it, I'll ask?
Ooh, it's close to 4,000 degrees.
Fahrenheit?
Kelvin. So in Fahrenheit, that's
like
about
7,800,
nearly 8,000 degrees on the day side. So the interesting thing about this planet is it's so close to its star, it's tidally locked, so it has a side of the planet that always faces the star as it orbits. So that side we know the temperature of. The night side we don't know yet, so we're trying to get some other follow-up space observations to try to determine the temperature of the night side.
And what was your role in finding this exoplanet?
Well, my role was modeling the overall system using our modeling software. We also did observations at one of University of Louisville's observatories out at Mount Lemmon in Arizona, where we did measure the night side, the day side temperature of the planet using University of Louisville's telescopes.
All right, and John, this was one of your students. Karen was one of your students, right?
One of the best. Yes.
One of the best. All right, so I guess you were pretty proud when you heard that she was on a team that discovered this exoplanet, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So is that a big deal in astronomy circles?
Oh yeah.
Why?
We've always been looking for a way to engage students in current astronomy. And as you probably know, the largest telescopes in the world are focused on cosmology, on distant galaxies and very faint things. It's very hard to find a topic that students can do something there, and also just to get access. The university doesn't, by and large, have that access. But we've built up a network of smaller telescopes that are ideal for following up on targets of opportunity for something that just comes up right now that we need to observe tonight. Mm-hmm. And exoplanets turned out to be just the wonderful thing for us to work on. So it gives us an opportunity for students to be involved in what is really cutting edge research.
Right. And Karen, does this exoplanet have a name, this one you found?
It's called KELT 9b.
Okay.
KELT stands for the Kilodegree Extremely Little Telescope. That's that's the overall survey that searches for these planets, and this that was the 9th one we found. We have 21 now, so we're up to KELT 21. KELT itself, it's called a telescope, but it's really just like a professional grade digital camera, and it just stares at the sky. So it's kind of like this big, a telescope this big, but it's robotic. It stares at the sky every clear night. We have one in the northern hemisphere, and we have one in South Africa in the southern hemisphere. So they find little dips in the brightnesses of stars, and they need larger telescopes like the ones we have at the University of Louisville to go confirm that those dips are indeed planets transiting in front of their stars.
So this exoplanet, how far is it from Earth, and how do I compare that? How do I get that straight in my mind as comparing to Pluto, for instance? And then how much further beyond that are we talking about?
So it's about 650 light years from us. Pluto is just a fraction of a light year. So it is.
It's way the hell out there.
Yeah, way the hell out there.
And it's a long ways away. And you kind of described on how you see it. It's science that I don't understand, basically, but you're not really seeing up close. There's no way to do that up close this exoplanet. You just know what's out there by what?
Right. So we confirm it in 3 different ways. Number one, in this particular case, we can measure the radius of the star by how much it the radius of the planet by how much it dims the star when it passes in front of the star. And that's the side of it that we focus on. We can also measure the mass of the planet with a technique called radial velocities, and we have another team that specializes in that. Furthermore, in this particular case, we were able to actually observe the shadow of the planet as it went across the star in spectroscopy.
Okay.
So we have
That's how you
3
figure it
different
out.
confirmations, and we're able to measure, the mass and the radius, which gives you the bulk, it's a gas planet, in other words, the bulk density.
We're talking with Karen Collins. She's an astronomer with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, and she's a U of L grad, and also John Kielkopf, who's an astrophysicist and a professor at the University of Louisville. John, we talked a little bit, and you mentioned it, one of the observatories that U of L is in collaboration with. What do we have out there? We don't have a big place pointing at the sky on the U of L campus, so what do we do?
Not far from here. We have telescopes at Moore Observatory, which is out in Oldham County. It's been operating there since the mid-1970s. And the largest telescope we have there is 24 inches across, which is the largest telescope operating in the state of Kentucky.
I didn't even know that. Little did I know.
And then we have another telescope, actually a pair of telescopes in Australia. One which is even bigger than that, and another one slightly smaller, that allow us to see the southern sky and allow our students to see night when it's daytime here. And just recently we started operating a telescope on Mount Lemmon in Arizona. So we have 3 instruments, all roughly the same size, located at different places around the globe, and it gives us full coverage.
So the students that come to U of L and are taking astronomy classes or astrophysics or whatever, do they go out to Oldham County and get to stare at the sky at night, or what do they do?
Well, they can. It's difficult for students because it's in the middle of the night and it's back in the university's wildlife sanctuary, kind of hidden.
They're
from
young.
public
They
view.
can get up at 3
right.
o'clock in the morning and go look at the stars if they want to. Bad
They
enough,
have
right?
to get up the next day and go to classes too. So most of our instruments are remotely operable, which means that you can sit here on campus or in your home and connect to the telescopes on your computer and run them.
Modern technology.
Yeah,
huh?
so we run the telescopes in Australia that way, or with help of somebody who's on site, and do that the same way here.
So Karen, when you were at U of L, is that what sparked your interest in this, or did you know when you came to U of L that that's what you wanted to do, that you wanted to look at the sky?
I actually did not know that when I came to U of L. I ended up in an astrophysics survey class with Dr. Kielkopf, and I decided to do my term project on exoplanets, and learned what we already knew about exoplanets in the course of doing that, and just became fascinated with it, and that's just what
Sparked
sucked
your
me
interest,
in.
huh?
Yep.
Okay.
And then she became an expert in how to make these very careful measurements that are required to determine the properties of the
Using
planets.
modern technology, I guess, right?
Right.
Well, let's turn the page a little bit here and talk about what's coming up next month.
Okay.
Let's talk about the total eclipse. It's a big deal. Everybody's talking about it here in Kentucky, John. So why don't you tell us what you know about the total solar eclipse, and talk about what we're doing here at the University of Louisville to kind of watch it.
Well, just to make the connection, and total eclipses on our local scale, pretty much the same thing that we're seeing when we look at exoplanets. It's something getting in the way of, in this case, our star, the sun, and it blocks the light out. Now, for an exoplanet, what's lost is a fraction of a % of the light of the star. But for the sun, if you're in the right spot on the Earth, it's all of it. So that's what makes this exciting. The sun will simply get blocked out, and then you'll be able to see the parts of the sun that are its extended atmosphere that we cannot ordinarily see with our eyes, although with instruments we've been able to do that for years. So it's primarily in this era just the human experience of seeing this happen, and a sort of event that has occurred over the long duration of human civilization as a really major, sometimes an omen of catastrophe type.
But it's very rare to have one of these in Kentucky, right?
It's rare to have one where you can be in the path of totality. It's not quite so rare to have one where you see part of the sun blocked out. So for this eclipse, which is on Monday, August the 21st, here in Louisville, there'll be about 5% of the sun that won't be blocked out, so it'll still be pretty bright in our sky, but a large part of it will be behind the moon. If you go to the right place in Kentucky, Hopkinsville is the center of the event. The entire sun will be blocked out.
Why is this such a big deal for astronomers when you have a total solar eclipse?
Well, it was a big deal, especially, of course, when it was first discovered how to predict them. So that goes back a very long way to before modern astronomy. And then in recent times, for things like the confirmation of Einstein's theory of gravity was done one of the benchmark or cornerstone pieces of evidence that it was right. And that's the theory behind things like black holes, was the discovery that starlight gets bent when it passes by the sun. Now, the sun's so bright we can't see stars that are near it except during an eclipse, and it was in eclipses in the early part of the 20th century that was proven.
All right, that's John Kielkopf. He's a professor at the University of Louisville, and we've also got Karen Collins, who's an astronomer with the Smithsonian Astrophysics Observatory and a U of L graduate. Karen, is this a big deal, the upcoming total solar eclipse? Is it a big deal for astronomers on a national level since it's coming across the United States?
I think, in my opinion, it's a big deal from a public outreach perspective.
To get more people interested in what's
yeah,
going on in the sky.
Because as John mentioned, we have instruments that we can study things that we used to only be able to study during an eclipse. We can do that more readily now when there's not an eclipse. But there are, groups of amateur astronomers and others that get together, and it's just like a big family gathering, and go to these things and have a good time, and then the event happens and it's mysterious and eerie, and so it's just a great time.
So it's good for your field of study that other people begin to understand how cool it is to be looking at stuff in the sky.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Is that the nuts and bolts?
And just to appreciate that, the sun is out there, the moon is out there, they're really orbiting the Earth, and they can get in the way of each other, and you just don't think about these things on a daily basis. So
and
highlights that.
Right, and I know, John, the planetarium at the University of Louisville and some others have some programming on that day.
The planetarium will be running some public outreach programming that the university will announce, and then the Louisville Astronomical Society is coordinating around the community to provide telescopes and experts who can help people understand and see some of these things that you might miss.
August 21st is the date of the total solar eclipse. Karen, congratulations on finding a new exoplanet. I'm sure you're still looking for some more, right?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. Glad to have both of you on the show. Thanks for listening, and go Cards.